Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Devin, Hasson, and David Wolman. A bit of a throwback here as we're recording in the hallway of our newsroom. Our publisher has commandeered our usual recording studio, and you know what? He signs our checks, so that's what he gets to do. So
fair enough.
Yeah. We're out here in the hall recording this episode as we look ahead to some of the marquee games coming up in Week 5 of high school football season, and that starts with our Game of the Week, gentlemen. A very lively turnout on the poll on our website, starlocalmedia.com. Big thanks to everybody who went to our website to vote this week. Devin, they're back.
Yes, they are.
With a vengeance. the Sachse Mustangs and that rabid fan base, many a Game of the Week winner in years past. And sure enough, it is their big game Thursday night, 7 o'clock at Williams Stadium against Garland that takes the cake. And they gained a nice little measure of distance in the voting on this one. So, yes, is there a name for that fan base, like the Stang Gang?
Mustang Nation.
Mustang Nation. Everybody's got a nation. Everybody's got a
nation.
Yeah. But Mustang Nation was in full force for this one. So let's talk about it. This is a big game in District 9-6A, a very, very compelling game. I'm not sure where this ranked at the start of the season as far as your games to watch within the district. It's certainly one that's got a little bit of that's built up a little bit of anticipation, though, especially after last week with what Garland did against Naaman Forest. So let's talk about first off just kind of how these two teams got to this point. We can start with the team that you guys are both familiar with because you guys have both seen them in person, that being Sachse. Mm-hmm. I've not seen them, so I'm just going to sit back and let you guys kind of wax philosophical on what Sachse brings to the table. Devin, just obviously they've been the gold standard in Garland ISD football for the past few years. So is that still the case with Sachse? What is kind of the read on what the Mustangs have shown early on this season?
They had. They weren't expected to have as many questions as they did. If you look at last year's returning players, you think, oh, Sachse's in really good shape, particularly on offense. Mm-hmm. And then, as we talked about in weeks past, I mean, the transfers just seem to, every year it seems to be more and more.
It's a carousel.
Yeah, and so you look at, their leading passer last year, Parker Wells, is now at Allen. They're
playing defense at Allen.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Their leading rusher, Sean Coleman, who rushed for 1,250 yards, is now at Dallas Christian and tearing things up at Dallas Christian, as one might expect at the private school level with a player his caliber. Jay Fair and Jordan Neighbors, two of their top receivers, are now two of the top receivers at Rockwall Heath, who is putting up all sorts of crazy numbers. So you go from Sachse having all these proven commodities to having question marks at the skill positions. Coming into the season, you didn't know how that was going to, how that was going to play out. But you figure, what comes around goes around. So you have a lot of transfers out. You kind of do one in return. Yeah. And they got one with Alex Orjai, the quarterback who started at Rockwall his freshman year, played last year at Bishop Dunn, and came on strong. David, you got to see him in his debut 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Very impressive.
Yeah, he's a guy that is still trying to find his way. He had a lot of open receivers. And granted, this is a Sachse team that's only played twice.
For sure.
They played 2 weeks ago against Coppell, and then I saw him last week against North Garland. But I think him and his receivers are still trying to get on the same page. He's got a great arm, but was a little out of sync last week. That being said, he's still throwing for 411 yards and 3 touchdowns, but it's really with his legs that he's just dazzling back there. I mean, he just is. He could make a play out of nothing. He's rushed for 303 yards in 2 games, so he's averaging 150.
That's pretty good.
5 touchdowns.
Not bad for a quarterback.
3 touchdowns on the ground last week against North Garland. It's just effortless. He could just get to the edge. And we were laughing about it. The other day, just off. Talking about Kyler Murray, even at the professional level, how quickly he gets that edge and just gets around pro defenses. Well, Alex Orjai is kind of the same in a high school level, just the way he can accelerate and nobody else can catch up with him. So that's obviously a key piece that's developed for him. The running game is solid. Brian Okoye was the backup to Sean Coleman last year. He's done a solid job. Corey Jones had a 45-yard touchdown run last week, I should say. So they got a solid 1-2 punch in the backfield as far as running backs go. And they've had some guys step up on the outside. Jaden Hunter leads the team with 10 catches. Elijah Ames, Jet Creel had 4 catches last week. So the skill positions are kind of coming together. They've got a solid offensive line. So, offensively, that's kind of where Sachse's been, they've been one of the prolific offenses in the area in past years. They're not to that point yet, but the potential is certainly there.
David, you got to see this team in person in their first game against a Capel team that, granted, Capel already had a game under their belt at the time, and whether that played into the eventual outcome of that game. It's still a competitive game. Looked like it was fairly back and forth between the Cowboys and the Mustangs. But speaking strictly from what you recall in watching Sachse, what was kind of the first thing that jumped out when you think back to that game?
Explosive plays.
Yeah.
Just in the first quarter, they had first half, I think they had 2 touchdowns of at least 70 yards in that game.
Wow.
I think it was the first play from scrimmage. Alex Orji, he scrambled for a 1 touchdown. He was running around to his left, did the little option, then he just took off.
Really?
And bam, touchdown 7-0 right there in favor of Sachse. And then later in the first half, Capel was trying to account for Orji's speed right there, and then he just took a couple steps to his left, and everybody thought he was going to run. Boom, hits a wide open receiver right there. So just that option right there, attack gives them so many different options as far as explosive play. So very impressive with that. They did have their chances to build on a lead right there. They had a few times there in the first half. Capel did kind of, make some adjustments at half and, kind of limited them there in the second half. And including Capel also had a pick six that kind of, slowed them down a little bit. But, even till the end, they even fought till the end of the game right there, especially with all the moving pieces that they had a chance to win there at the end of the game right there. So that just shows you that this is a team that's not going to go down without a fight.
Whereas you had a team like Sachse that really came into the season with far more question marks than they anticipated. It's kind of been the opposite for Garland. That's a team that had a lot of continuity working in its favor, and it sounds like that's been the case in recent years with them, with kind of what this program once was. I mean, it's not too long ago that they were 1-9. In 2018, just 1-6 in district, but then they've kind of grown up together. Last season was an improvement, 3-7, 1-6, and now this season they've already matched their win total from last season with a 3-0 start, 2-0 in district play, and then I think last week against Neiman Forest was kind of the maybe the first big kind of statement as far as this team maybe arriving as a potential playoff team in 9-6A, because it was one thing in their first couple games you beat up on Richardson, you beat up on North Garland. But to do so against a Neiman Forest team that I think they might have actually been, I don't have my, anything in front of me, but I think I actually saw some polls picking them to win that district at the start of the season. And that's, granted, it's kind of a fool's errand to pick any team just to outright win that district, given what we saw last year in the Garland ISD district. But, for Garland to already make a statement like that and to do so in a fashion that's kind of like Lovejoy last week, where, again, you were scoring so effortlessly those first 2 weeks, and then you run into a team that offers a bit of resistance, got to work through some uncomfortable spots. And, this was a Garland team that was shut out through 3 quarters, and then they were able to finally get things going there with 14 points in the fourth quarter, including the game-winning touchdown from Sergio Perez to Jordan Hudson with, I believe, 7 seconds left was when they took the lead on Neiman Forest. So it's just to show that you can win a game that's played outside your comfort zone, and to do so against a playoff caliber team like Neiman Forest, it's a nice kind of a character building moment, kind of a milestone moment for a team that had still been learning how to win high stakes varsity games, and just the kind of performance that you can really kind of draw upon going forward. Like I said, they got a lot of continuity though. Sergio Perez, a quarterback. Is this his third year as the starter? Has he been there since a freshman?
No, he's
okay. He was a sophomore.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to say, I think it was running around in GIC circles. I think it was during the Sachse Garland game.
Really?
When Sachse was beating them 74-9, and I think people up in the press box, they said that middle school group that's going to Garland, if they all go to Garland, that group's going to be good. The next year, Sachse is winning 49-0. This is that freshman group at Garland. Keep an eye on them, and certainly they all came up last year. They all basically stepped into starting roles. And, took some lumps, but learned a lot of lessons as well. And you mentioned, Sergio Perez has been, 765 yards and 11 touchdowns in 3 games. Jay Sean Powers, Jordan Hudson, you mentioned as a wide receiver, Ellis Rogers, Charles Allen. All those guys are juniors. And that's just really, they've come up again through middle school. They came up, they played together as freshmen. And, these guys know each other. They know their talents, and they're building confidence. And like you say, that game last week against Neiman Forest was huge because that's a very solid, well-coached Neiman team. It was a playoff team a year ago, and I saw some people kind of picking them. I think them and Sachse had a few votes as well. Like usual, but I still think that Neiman Forest team is a playoff team
for sure.
And I mean, that win goes a long, long way in terms of possible tiebreakers and just confidence. And we talked about the skill guys. Their defense is the same way. And you look at Keelan Smith and Geber Durant and Aaron King. Guess what they have in common also? All juniors. Yeah. I mean, that's just what they are. And their defense, they held Damon Forrest to 7 points last week. Mm-hmm. They shut out North Garland the week before. The opener against Richardson, it was 48-28, but that was kind of a misleading deal. They gave up 270 yards to Richardson. They had a couple turnovers, and Richardson had a defensive score. So their defense has really been solid from the start. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup to see how they can try to contain Sachse.
Yes, yeah, like you mentioned with the defense, it's not just the fact that it's a lot of juniors, but the guys that are all leading them in statistical categories. They're 3 leading tackers, like you mentioned, all juniors. The 2 players that have interceptions for them this season, Christian Cooper, Demarion Wigginton, both juniors. King, Chase Biddle, they have a combined 9 passes defensed, both juniors. Yeah. It's insane just how, you just wonder what the potential of this team is next season, but obviously right now, though, it's a chance in front of them to make a bit of a statement against what's been the bell cow team in Garland ISD football, and that's kind of where I just some numbers on what Sachse has done against Garland ISD in recent years, because this is, it's so impressive, just the role that they've been on. You look back to, kind of the 2016 season as far as when they kind of turned that corner as far as becoming the GISD football superpower. Since then, they've gone 25-0 against Garland ISD. Now, they had the district loss last year to Wiley by 1 point, but we're not talking about Wiley. We're talking about Garland ISD. And you look at the margin of victory in doing so, and across those 25 games, the average margin of victory against Garland ISD opponents, 29.2 points. And, that margin of victory was 34.7 if you're looking strictly from 2016 through 2018. Now, they came back to the pack a little bit last season. GISD offered a little bit more resistance, a lot of one-score games, just an 11.8 margin of victory. Ironically enough, that number's the only reason that number is as high as it is because of their game against Garland.
Well, I was going to say, who's felt the brunt of that? Because the last 4 scores, 56-10, 74-9, 49-0, 47-14.
Yeah. So even last year when they were still having to scrape by a lot of teams in that district, they still had their way with the Owls. So just, I guess, time to see just how much is changed in a year's time with that continuity and that experience that Garland has on its side. What is, just at the surface, Devin, what's the most compelling thing about this matchup to you?
I want to see if we've seen Garland click on all cylinders with that continuity that we talked about on offense. I want to see if Sachse can get to that same level. This is their 3rd game. This is the first time playing it back-to-back weeks. I mentioned that the offense just seemed a touch out of sync, but the potential's there. They had open receivers. Alex Orgel, like I say, has got a great arm. He's got good touch when he needs to throw. I want to see if the Sachse offense can start clicking all cylinders, because if they're not, it's going to be dangerous, because Garland is, I think. I think they are in midseason form despite all the distractions, despite
Absolutely.
all the postponements. They've got an extra game under their belt. They've been playing week to week, and they've shown that consistency on offense that Sachse hasn't quite gotten there yet. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, because if Sachse's clicking, I think they win this game.
What is, we've talked a bit about just the moving pieces on offense. What has Sachse's defense kind of shown early on this season?
In the opener, they played a very talented offense. Last week, their front 7 was impressive. Gavin Portillo, Takovi and Burnley, Albie and Krasnicki. These guys, anytime North Garland tried to run between the tackles, they went nowhere. In fact, they finished with -6 yards rushing. A couple of those were bad snaps that contribute to the yardage. Sure. But then again, there was a couple of 10, 12-yard gains in garbage time as well. They allowed 123 yards overall, and no one's going to, mistake this year's North Garland offense as a juggernaut, by any stretch of the imagination. But they have some talent. But I was just really impressed with their front 7 and what they were able to do. So, if they could take away Jayshon Powers in the running game for Garland and make Sergio Perez throw the ball, that could be a mistake, because that wide receiving talent, core is good, and he's been really accurate in spreading the ball around. They got 4 receivers, I think, with at least 10 catches. Yeah. But, if they can take away the ground game, I think that really lends to their advantage.
Yeah, because with the receiving core, it's not just Hudson, Ellis Rogers, Charles Allen, all those players being juniors, but they also have
senior.
They have a transfer from John Paul II, Shunte Nettles, who was actually a pretty key piece in that team's run to the state championship game last year. I had no idea that he was at Garland, and then looking over, I'm like, I recognize that name. Of course, how could you not recognize the name Shunte Nettles? And but he's carved out a nice little role for him. So David, let's talk predictions, man. So where where are you kind of leaning on this one? We've talked about Sachse Garland setting the stage for this big matchup Thursday. Where are you leaning as far as who gets the W?
Oh, man, I just got a lot of information in the last 2 minutes to make my prediction from you guys here.
Did you not make a prediction?
Oh, I did.
Pick a line already?
I had to send it to you by 6 o'clock last night. I am just the 25 games in a row that they've won over Garland IST.
It's tough to ignore recent history.
I think that gets into maybe the Garland IST team's heads a little bit. So I'm going to take Sachse by maybe a touchdown.
You do wonder if there is some sort of I don't know, Devin, do you get the sense that there's some sort of aura that surrounds Sachse on the football field? Obviously, last year, they obviously looked much more mortal than normal. But, when you've had a school that's kind of lorded over a group of teams for several years, I feel like sometimes that can become a mental thing.
Yeah, I don't know if Sachse quite has that mystique.
It's not quite Allen versus Plano ISD.
Well, yeah, like a Garland, for instance, had for so many, because, they had a state title. I mean, now it's been years and years and years. But, when you've had that little success, that tends to carry over as opposed to just they won the district last year, but then they got knocked out in the first round. Yeah. I do think just because they all grow up and because all these, with Garland IC being choice of schools, some of these kids go to school and then they separate and go to different high schools. So I think they have a bit. I don't think it's a straight intimidation factor, but they certainly know. That Sachse is the team to beat. Mm-hmm. And, we mentioned the past results for Garland as motivation right there. Wow. But, I don't think Garland's going to be intimidated. I think this comes down to – I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring, like we've seen some of the Sachse Ratlet games. You look at some of Sachse's close games last year. They're 24-20, 17-14. Yeah. That range kind of score. That's kind of how I'm viewing this game. I do think Sachse does enough to get it done. I think they want to win a 24-20 type game.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Kind of like you were saying, David. It's tough to ignore just the role that they've been on against GISD in recent years. And with Garland, a team that is certainly making strides. I've said it a lot in the past. Like when you have a case like this, I just need to see it happen first before I'm willing to go all in and believe in that team to beat an upper echelon program that's so established and so proven to the caliber of Sachse. So until given reason to believe otherwise, I'm just hardwired to never pick against Sachse in any district game, given what they've done the past 4 years, and not going to start now. So yeah, give me the Mustangs as well. So we are unanimous in picking Sachse to top Garland in our game of the week. Once again, this one is Thursday, 7 o'clock out at Williams Stadium. You're going to be there, Devin.
I will be there.
Should be a fun one. So let's before we get out of here, let's talk about some of the other games that were up for consideration for our game of the week poll. Let's see. We can start over in District 5A Division 1, a Thursday game, another Thursday game. This one is going to be out at Toyota Stadium, a battle of district unbeatens as Frisco Wakeland welcomes Big Bad Denton Ryan.
Oh man!
The number one team in the state comes to calling, and Denton Ryan playing its first game since the initially was going to be forfeitures. Now it's not going to be no contest. You wonder how much piss and vinegar they're going to be playing with on Thursday against Wakeland. But nevertheless, though, obviously a tall order for a Wakeland team that's been strong to begin the season. No one's really been able to slow down that offense, but if there is a defense that is more than capable of doing so, it is certainly that of the number one team in Class 5A Division 1. David, where are you leaning on this one?
Ooh, man. Frisco Wakeland's had an unbelievable start to the season. Yeah. 4-0 for the first time since 2017. And they've been dominant, in their 4 games so far. They've won every game by at least 28 points right there.
Wow.
Including the comeback last week when they were actually down 14-3 to the Colony, and they came back to win that game by 45-13. But Denton Ryan, it's probably one of the best, if not maybe the best defense in the state there, with Billy Bowman, Jatavian Sandys right there. And you also got this sophomore kid inside linebacker named Anthony Hill Jr.
Okay.
He's only a sophomore, but taking for this season right there, for only 3 games, he's had 11 tackles for loss.
That's pretty
good.
Yes.
And he's like I said, he's only a sophomore, but he already has 18 Division I offers. Mm-hmm. And for this season right there, Ryan's defense right there, they've had through 3 games, they've had 25 tackles for loss. So I think it's going to be a little bit hard for Wakeland's offense to get on track against a stud defense like that with all the talent that they have on there. Even though Jared White's had a really good season so far, 9 touchdowns and 560 yards, and Peyton Lewis has done his thing at quarterback with almost 800 passing yards. it's going to be hard to really get on track against a Ryan team that has a lot of has a pretty big chip on its shoulder against the Frisco ISD. So
yeah, with Ryan, I mean, just you look at week 2, what they did against Denton Guyer, which for my money, that's as good as an offense as they'll see all season. They win that game 23-20, so they were able to shut down Frisco Wakeland is a really, really good offense by District 5A Division I standards. Denton Guyer is a great offense by just Texas high school football standards, and Ryan was able to make them look pretty human. I mean, they've shown that they have the ability to shut down elite offenses, and I think that continues on Thursday as well. So give me the Ryan Raiders to get it done against Wakeland.
Well, and we've talked about the defense, though. I mean, Wakeland's given up 37 points in 4 games.
Yeah.
If I set the over-under at 37 points for the Ryan offense to score, what would you take?
Give me
because that offense is loaded too. I really like Wakeland. I really like the start they've gotten off to. But I
mean, you got Seth Hennigan, who's a quarter. He's going to Memphis next year. Senior quarter.
It's so much Division I talent on that team.
Yeah,
they're on a mission, and I think they get it done. So, yes, we are unanimous in picking Ryan to stay unbeaten and get the win over Wakeland in 5A Division I action. We got a busy week on 6A. This starting up on Friday, and this obviously has a big game out in Flower Mound, the Mound Showdown. We get the Mound Showdown to begin district play. How about that? This one, the annual meeting between Marcus and Flower Mound. This one is Friday, 7 o'clock out at Neil Wilson Stadium. This has traditionally been a game that's been very, very high scoring. It's been very, very closely contested. I believe, 3 of the past 4 meetings have been decided by 7 points or less. Both teams, though, at least in Flower Mound's case, had much different identity than usual. I mean, in years past, it's always been just offense, and what they had in recent years with Blake Short and Pierce Hudgens and Reed Touchstone and just all the firepower they had on offense. Now that's, they only had 2 starters coming back on that side of the ball, but there's obviously talent still there. Even before he made his first ever varsity start, Nick Ebers already had like 4 or 5 Division I offers on the table. I mean, so there's obviously, plenty of encouragement as far as what he could become as far as a quarterback prospect goes. They've been a little slow out of the gates trying to find their footing on offense, but fortunately, they've had a defense that's been just among the best in the district right now. Led up front by Stone Eby, SMU commit Colton Vatney. They've got they've held McKinney Boyd. They shut out McKinney Boyd essentially. The only points that they allowed there was a defensive touchdown, and then they only lost 18-13 to a state-ranked Mansfield Timberview team. So their defense has shown well against at least in the Timberview's case, a solid offense. Now Marcus is as good an offense as you'll find in District 6A, especially when it comes to moving the ball through the air with Garrett Nussmeyer, LSU commit, then his top receiver, Cal commit, J. Michael Sturdivant, Dallas Dudley, a really, really promising junior for them. So it's, Marcus has a little bit more continuity working in its favor. Their defense has also been pretty solid as well. So I don't think this is going to look the same as recent iterations of that rivalry have. Who knows? Maybe that's just the rivalry juices are enough to really kind of crank up that Flower Mound offense to the levels that we've seen them perform at in the past. But for now, though, I mean, heck, I picked Marcus to win the district, at the start of the year, and I'm obviously not ready to go back on that in their first district ball game. So I'm taking the Marauders to get the win over Flower Mound. Devin, where'd you lean on this?
I took the same way. I went with Marcus. I just think they have too much firepower. Yeah. Flower Mound defense is, like you say, has been impressive. Held Naaman Forest in 9 points as well. Yeah. But at the same time, they've scored 10, 29, and 13 in 3 weeks, and I just don't think that's enough against Marcus.
We were unanimous as well in this one. All of us picking Marcus to beat Flower Mound in the annual Mound Showdown to kick off District 6A action. We pivot back to Frisco ISD. This game Friday, 7 o'clock at the Ford Center at the Star. This was almost our game of the week. A very, very spirited charge by the 2 fan bases in this matchup, Frisco and Lebanon Trail. Big one for Lebanon Trail. It's a chance to kind of in the sense of kind of a little bit like Sachse and Garland in a way with the more established top dog in this matchup, Frisco High, the defending co-district champion, and Lebanon Trail, a program that obviously Garland has quite a few more years under their belts, a football program
just 100
than Lebanon Trail. But as far as the recent trajectory with a program that started off its trajectory on a low note, but is really kind of working itself back up into being a potential playoff contender. Lebanon Trail was 4-0 to begin the season.
First time in school history,
and doing some great work there. But as far as what this matchup means, it's a chance for Frisco to I guess to further assert its status as the team to beat in 7-5A Division II. I mean, the role they've been on to start the year. I mean, they're number 5, number 6 in the state right now.
Number 5,
and it's just, I mean, I can't remember the last time that Frisco had a team that was this highly touted, during the season. A team with legitimate state championship aspirations. And Lebanon Trail, though, I mean, they've had some quality victories this season. Beating Corsicana, solid. The heroics against Memorial, solid. This one feels like maybe just a little bit too much for what they've shown so far. So I leaned Frisco in this one personally to stay unbeaten, continue their march towards a potential district championship. Devin, you do a lot of Frisco for us. So just talk a bit about this matchup and what sticks out and where you're leaning on this one.
Lebanon Trail obviously is playing with a lot of confidence, but like you say, they had they been here before? No. Mm-hmm. Every step they take is a first-time experience for them almost, and certainly beating Frisco would be a huge feather in their cap and huge in terms of confidence. But it's just so hard to see. I mean, their ground game has been exceptional over at Lebanon Trail with Greg Hatley and Parker Maui. Those guys have rushed for over 500 yards between the two of them. Drew Martin, their quarterback, has done a good job throwing the ball, can also move the ball with his legs. Mm-hmm. It's just so hard to see them moving the ball against Frisco effectively because that Frisco, I mean, we talked about independence before the season started, being a team that's capable of averaging 50 points a game. They held them to 14 in the opener. And they followed that up by shutting out Reedy, and they hold Lake Dallas to 3 points. So they've given up 17 points in 3 games. They have 8 takeaways and 15 sacks in those 3 games. It's just, and you look, and it's not just one guy. They got, 8 guys with double-digit tackles, several different guys with interceptions. It's just, up and down. I just think that they're going to be able to limit Lebanon Trail. But that is the matchup I'm good to see. If Lebanon Trail is able to, establish a ground game, then I think this could be a really, really close game. But if Frisco takes that away like they've done against everybody else, I just think between that defense, and they have enough weapons on offense that they're going to, maybe a 10, 14-point win.
David, you in line with us? You rolling with Frisco as well?
I'm in line with that, not only with their defense, but the way Frisco just methodically moves the ball. I mean, Lebanon Trail's not going to have too many possessions in this game because I'm pretty sure Frisco's going to have a few big runs in this game because Lebanon Trail, they gave up quite a few big plays to Lake Dallas last week, and I'm pretty sure Frisco's going to be able to control the clock with their offense. Maybe get some methodical drives and hit the quick one every now and then. So they're going to control the clock right there. I feel like Lebanon Trail might put up a couple of touchdowns against them, especially early on, as both teams try to get a feel for each other. But Frisco, both sides of the ball, the way they're able to control their clock with their wing T offense, and just how stacked they are with their defense. I mean, just look at the way they controlled the line of scrimmage against Frisco Independence right there, and just held Braylon Braxton in his tracks right there.
Oh yeah,
a guy who threw for over 3,000 yards last year and limited them to 14 points. So I feel like it might be a close game for a while, but I feel like Frisco's just going to win this game by at least a couple touchdowns.
Lots of unanimity on the podcast so far. As yes, we are all in concert in picking Frisco to top Lebanon Trail. We do veer off a little bit though for this last game as we now close things out with a look at a matchup Friday 7:30 p.m. out at the Forrester Athletic Complex in Dallas as Mesquite takes on Skyline in District 10 6A action. Devin, Mesquite is straight out of your wheelhouse, so just talk a bit about this matchup, what stands out, and where do you ultimately lean on this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting game. I mean, this is the district opener, but these are 2 new district rivals. Skyline actually being added to the Mesquite ISD, Rockwall ISD fray with the departure of Longview. Skyline's had, tremendous success over the years. I think it was, 24. I did a different story. I think 24 of the last 25 years they've made the playoffs. Hasn't always been pretty, and it hasn't always been in the toughest district. So, but when you kind of look at how that district's laid out with Rockwall and Rockwall Heath, and how are you going to keep up with those 2 offenses, and Tyler Legacy with a really nice resume they put together through the first month of the season, even though we don't see a lot of them locally until they get in district play. So, they're kind of pegged as a playoff team. So that kind of leaves one spot up for those other teams, if you're to believe that. Now, anything can happen.
For sure.
But if that's the way it plays out, then this game, even though it's the opener, could be huge because that could be something in 6 weeks we go back and say, hey, that's the difference between Mesquite or Skyline making the playoffs. Now, granted, Horn's going to have something to say about that as well.
Absolutely.
But, Mesquite's off to an 0-3 start. but it's somewhat deceiving. Their last two games that they've lost to South Grand Prairie and Grand Prairie have been by a combined 6 points. I think that the thing for Mesquite is at quarterback. They entered the season with they're basically rotating Hunter Nucci and Chance Edwards. Chance Edwards kind of took over that role against South Grand Prairie and played really well, threw for 250 yards, but then was hurt and it didn't play. And Hunter Nucci took all the snaps 2 weeks ago, I should say, against Grand Prairie. Did a solid job, but they both bring a little bit different to the table. Interested to see. I've not heard anything on Chance Edwards in terms of he's going to be able to go this week. Mm-hmm. I do think he brings a little bit different dimension into that game. Outside of that, the Mesquite offense has had periods where they've looked really good and periods where they haven't. That goes back to against Coppell and South Grand Prairie. I do like when I had a chance to see him a few weeks ago. Anthony Roberts, their running back, I think has done a really nice job, kind of taking over that lead role. He's coming up a 100-yard game in his last outing. So we'll see. Their defense has been solid. Skyline, they were on their way. I kind of wrote them off on, just by following on Twitter. They're getting beat, and all of a sudden they come out of nowhere and we're able to rally past, I guess, Keller last week. Just going over there, Jalen Robinson throws 3 touchdown passes. Quaylen Farmer, just going by the numbers, seems to be a very solid running back. Mm-hmm. R.J. Bonner, I did see his name as far as the wide receivers go, a transfer from Mesquite. Yep. And so... and Skyline always does have talent at the skill positions. This game's going to be close. I mean, I tend, and you tend to do this with certain staffs. Jeff Fleener and that staff at Mesquite, they tend to find a way to win games, close games. And once you kind of have that reputation, that kind of is when you're flipping a coin on a game like this, you kind of lean toward the team that the coaching staff. I don't know the Skyline coaching staff. I do know the Mesquite coaching staff. So I do think it's going to be a close game, but I do think Mesquite finds a way to win.
David, you picked Mesquite as well. I was the one that veered off the tracks, though. And you know what? I don't have any sort of inside track as far as what Skyline brings to the table in this matchup. I just kind of like the way that they're playing right now. It's just as simple as looking last week and just the resilience they showed coming back against a Keller team that I think is a playoff team, at least out of that district. And then, even though they lost to Mesquite, you were actually at that game, David. I still think that's a respectable. Yeah. I still think that sorry, I said Mesquite, stupid me. Still a respectable showing against a Mesquite team that I think is also a playoff team out of 5-6-8, and that plays a really, really good, plays really, really solid defense. So I don't really, think that's any sort of knock against them that they weren't able to get that done, especially in their first game of the season.
I think, did they have Lancaster first?
I don't think that did. No, that game happened.
Got canceled.
I don't think that game got COVIDed, I think.
COVIDed, yes.
Yeah. So, but nevertheless, though, I don't know. I just kind of like the rhythm that they're in, and just the confidence that they might be, that they might have coming off of that performance against Keller. And yeah, you know what? I think it'll be a close game as well. But give me the Skeeters by, I don't know, like 1 to 3 points. I think it'll be a competitive one right down to the wire. So yes, that is a look at kind of where we're at as far as the other marquee games in our coverage area. We can close this out with a look at what else was on the docket for the picket line. Just a quick summation of the rest of our picks as I try to load this up. Let's see here. There was let's see, of the 10 games at stake, we were unanimous on 8 of them, as you've already kind of got a hint from. We were obviously unanimous on Marcus over Flower Mound, Frisco over Lebanon Trail. We're all picking Frisco Independence to beat Frisco Reedy as Independence searches for its first win of the season. Like I said, we've just talked about Mesquite and Skyline. These two are going Mesquite. I'm going Skyline. Then you also have the rivalry between Mesquite Horn and North Mesquite. We are all in consensus there and picking Horn to beat North in that matchup. Got a couple 6-6A matchups in addition to the Mound showdown on the docket. A couple Plano ISD versus Louisville ISD matchups. Plano East versus Hebron. We're all going Hebron. Plano versus Coppell. We're all going Coppell. Let's see. Then Rowlett finally gets its season under the way. Rowlett making its, the season is already like a month old, essentially, and they will finally play their first game of the season. They square off against North Garland on Thursday. Despite the unorthodox way that their season has unfolded at this point, we still think the Eagles are going to get the win. We're all picking Rowlett to beat North Garland. And, yes, we've touched on our game of the week. We're all in concert picking Sachse to beat Garland. And then we have another matchup in 5-5A Division I, the Colony versus Frisco Centennial. David, you and I think the Colony get it done. Devin thinks Centennial gets it done. So right. We will see. As far as the picket line standings, for anyone who gives a rip about that, David, you are 24-13 in third place. Devin, you are 25-12 in second place, and I am 26-11. So still a lot to be decided there as far as who comes away with the picket line championship at Star Local Media. So yes, guys, that is a look at least some of the big games in our coverage here. As far as the games we will actually be at front and center in person this week, Devin, what does your coverage schedule look like?
Well, I will be at the voter suggested a game of the week, Sachse and Garland on Thursday. Obviously, big. We've talked about that already. And then a game you just mentioned a second ago, Horn and North Mesquite, crosstown rivalry at Mesquite Memorial Stadium, Friday night at 7:30.
David, how about you?
Thursday, I'm going to be at Toyota Stadium for Denton Ryan at Frisco Wakeland. And then Friday, I'm going to be at the Colony to go cover Frisco Centennial at the Colony. Actually, wait, it's the other way around. It's at Memorial Stadium. I got the venues mixed up.
Make sure you don't go to Tommy Briggs.
Yeah, I'll go up there and nobody show up. The lights are off. I'm like, wait, what happened here? Then I have to make a U-turn to pay more tolls. So, yep.
Don't want
that. That's okay, now it's at Memorial Stadium. I can confirm that.
I will be, I'll be double dipping into District 6A. Thursday, I'll be out at Clark Stadium in Plano for the district opener, I should say, between Plano West and Louisville. And then Friday, I'll be going to the other venue for Plano ISD, Kimbrough Stadium, to watch Plano East for the first time this season as they take on Hebron. So, yes, that is a look at what is on our docket this week, and that will do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Monday to recap all the fascinating happenings for Week 5. And until then, folks, you take care. We will talk to y'all later.